Hi guys, I'm Woodcraft Hamster, and I thought I'd do a quick video today about my first aid kit. It's something that I think most people that practice things like bushcraft will probably carry with them, and if you don't, maybe it's something to consider. And what I do, this is my first aid kit here. It's something I carry generally whenever I go out, whether it's a day hike, certainly for longer expeditions, a night out or weekend out or longer. And I've basically just got a very, very small, this is a sort of a molly style pack. You can use whatever you like to pack this in. This was just the one I ended up going with. And what I thought I'd do, if I bring the camera just a little bit closer in, I'll open this up and take you through what I keep in here and why I keep it. And the one thing I did want to say just before doing that is this is my personal first aid kit. This is what I take out for my own personal use if eventually I assume when I get into some sort of a problem. And this just covers what I feel I will probably need in the way of first aid kit. Now I can by all means delve into this if I'm out with a friend or a couple of friends and someone has sort of a minor accident or a minor injury. I can quite happily delve into this in order to assist them, but predominantly it is just for me. And personally I think that's quite important, because what some people I've seen elsewhere have done is they've taken quite a large extensive first aid kit. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, I'm not knocking it, but you need to sort of balance what you're taking with you against the risks and the likelihood of something happening. So obviously as bushcrafters, we use a number of tools. We've got knives, axes, saws, fire. These four things alone can issue a whole range of injuries if you're not sort of being careful and you're not being safe. And even when you are, accidents do happen. And that's pretty much what I pack in here, is for those kind of eventualities. But let me bring you a little bit closer in and I'll show you what it is that I've got in here, and I'll explain through my thoughts on what's in there. Okay guys, so here's my first aid kit, and what I'll do, let me just open this up and I will explain to you what it is I keep in here. I'm going to start off with just some of the real basic stuff, so I'm going to take a few bits out and just put them to the side for now. And what I'll do is I'll start going through things in a bit more detail. So first and foremost, this is just a piece of medical tape. Really, really useful stuff, really good for sort of sticking things together, especially if you need to sort of put a bit more pressure onto a wound or a dressing or something like that. So I just always keep a bit of this with me. Next up, where are we? Plasters. Just a roll of fabric plasters. Really useful, multitude of uses, and to be perfectly honest, these are the things I probably use most out of anything. I'm constantly getting little nicks and little cuts, mainly off of sort of branches and wood and things like that, though occasionally, as I suspect all of us do at times, I will nick myself with a knife or something. Moving on from that, now some of you may recognise what these are. I've taken one out of the packet just to give you a bit of an example. These are women's tampons. Now they are an absolutely brilliant fire lighting source, and I always keep a few in my kit anyway to carry around with me. This one is a sealed one, so obviously it's a little bit more sort of sanitary. This one I've taken out just for demonstration purposes, and in conjunction with something like this, at a real pinch, if you do manage to cut yourself and it's a serious enough cut that you feel you need to get medical attention, it's beyond something like a plaster. Aside from dressings, which I do have here, standard ambulance dressings, these are number ones, that's all I feel I really need to take with me. But if you've used those up, or for some reason you've forgotten them, or whatever the case may be, you can take one of these, take it out of its little tube, and what you can basically do is open this up. Now let's say you've cut yourself on the palm of your hand, let's say. So what you can do is you can take this, you can get some really good pressure on it to sort of staunch that bleeding. You then take your tape, you wrap it round a few times nice and tight, and that will keep that fixed in place whilst you go for help. And provided you haven't sort of cut through an artery or something and you've got blood really spurting everywhere, this will really, really help. And again, these are designed, I'm sure there'll be a few people shouting at the screen at this point, but they are designed to stem blood flow. I appreciate they're not designed specifically for this kind of injury, if you like. However, this is a very, very good way of stemming blood flow if you don't have anything else to hand. And again, if there's a slightly more serious injury, you could take a couple of these dressings, apply those. You could put this on first, or you could put it on afterwards, just so you've got that extra layer to sort of try and absorb some of that blood and stem that flow, allow the wound to clot while you're seeking medical help. And that's really about as far as it goes for the sort of the serious wound side. You know, that's really all I carry with me, because to be honest, I'm not massively trained. I have got first aid qualifications, only to a very basic level, though I do think that's another thing to talk about. It's something really important. If you're going to carry a first aid kit with you, make sure you understand how to use it. Now, first aid qualifications are a brilliant way to do that. Even if you just get like a basic course through someone like St John's Ambulance or the British Red Cross, it just gives you a bit of understanding. You know, I don't have things like triangular bandages in here and stuff like that, because I'm comfortable enough that I can fashion a sling from a piece of clothing or a belt or something like that. But yeah, they do have their place, and if you feel more comfortable carrying one, then by all means do. Next up in here, what have we got here? Oh, I tell a lie. What I have is one of these. Now, a very good friend of mine is actually a paramedic, and he provided me one of these. I don't know how to stitch a wound. This is a suture kit. This is for stitching wounds. I don't know how to use one of these. I have been promised a bit of training by him on this, on how to use them. But the reason I've got this in my kit is because he is trained to use these. And to be perfectly honest, I go camping with him quite regularly. And therefore, if ever the need arose, I've got one just in case it's needed, and I know that he will be able to use that properly. Whether or not we ever do need to use it, I hope it never happens, but it's worthwhile having it there just in case. And the last little bit of those, I suppose, are these, just a couple of wound dressings, and again, this is more for if kind of I've burnt myself or something like that. It's just something sterile to put over the top. So that's that side of it. I've also got here is a burn dressing. Now obviously if you're out bushcrafting and you're anything like me, you like to have a fire going. I'm quite happy to use camping stoves and that kind of thing, but I do like a real fire, and you know, both of them carry risks, especially an open fire. And what you do is you basically just tear open this bag. It's single use. You tear it open. Say I've burnt my arm somehow, tear it open, put it on my arm, and that will help sort of bring down any inflammation and cool down that burn, certainly for a short period while I go and get professional help. So again, the thing with first aid, and I should have mentioned this at the start, is it's not about completely curing you of an injury or something like that. It's just about preventing it from getting any worse, and allowing you to get out from where you are and seek professional help. Now moving on from there, there's one stuck in here as well, but I've got a couple of these which are, what do you class these as? They're kind of like electrolyte powders, and what they do, they give you a bit of a shot of energy, a bit of sugar, and they're used for athletes normally. But I like to keep these in here because if ever you've been out for a day, I mean, you know, quite often I find that I forget to drink, and the problem with that is that you then get a little bit dehydrated. These are really good for rehydration, and if you've not been eating as well and your body's lacking a little bit of sugar or something like that, having one of those will really give you sort of a good quick fix. And before I go on, this is just another example. These are just kind of sort of sports drinks, and again electrolytes and things in there, so these are really, really useful. And there's a couple more things I want to show you, but before I do, basically this here is all pain-killing medication. There's various types, apart from these two which I'll show you in a sec, but I've got ibuprofen, paracetamol, aspirin, anything that I think maybe I will need, and again, if I'm out and about by myself, this is really useful. If I'm out with friends, as much as any first aid course or any first aid training you may have will tell you, you do not give medication of any form to anybody, unless you're, you know, a qualified nurse or doctor, or you're able to do that. However, I think, you know, with a little bit of common sense, you know, all of us at some point, I suspect, you know, you're out with a friend, you know, whether you're at home, whether you're at work, whether you're out socially, or whether you're out bushcrafting and camping, if someone's got a headache, oh, you know, I've got a killing headache, you know, and you happen to have sort of some ibuprofen or some paracetamol with you, oh, here you go, mate, have one of these. And I'm quite happy to do that with these, because I know the guys that I go out camping with. They know what they can and can't use. I mean, no one I go out camping with has any allergies or anything like that. But you know, if I offer them an aspirin or a paracetamol, oh no, I can't use that. You know, these guys know what they're doing. So just, you know, use a little bit of common sense in that regard. And finally, in terms of the sort of the medication side of things, I've got some water tablets here, water sterilisation tablets, should I say. So this is a chlorine tablet, so you can take water from a suspect source, drop one of those in, give it a shake, give it 10 minutes, and that will sterilise that water. These tablets are neutralising tablets, and all they do is they neutralise the taste of the chlorine. I don't know if you've ever drunk water purified with these. It's drinkable by any means, but it just doesn't taste great. So this just kind of neutralises that flavour a bit. And then finally, I've got two more things on this kit. One is a pair of medical shears. Basically, it's a pair of scissors, and they're designed specifically for sort of cutting through heavy cloth and clothing and that kind of thing. So if ever I'm out, let's say I cut myself, or someone I'm out with cuts themselves, and it's gone through the leg of their trousers or something, and you need to get to that wound, you don't want to take the time or the aggravation or whatever it is to sort of try and remove that piece of clothing. You can just grab these. They're non-pointed, so you're not going to jab them into somebody and do them an injury, but you can bring them up and you can just run through the leg of a trouser or the arm of a jacket or a shirt, and you can get to the site of that wound nice and easy. And for the size and the space and the weight these take up, I think they're really worthwhile having. And finally, I carry this. Now this is a tourniquet. It's known as a CAT, a combat application tourniquet. Now this is the only bit of I suppose specialist kit that I carry with me. I do have training on how to use this, and I would certainly recommend that anybody that even considers purchasing one of these knows how to use it and has the relevant training. The one reason I carry this is, in my view, a very important one, and that's a serious cut. We're talking sort of, you know, cutting very deeply into either a vein or an artery, specifically an artery. And what this will allow you to do, as an example, you will put this above the site of the wound. So let's say I've cut my wrist here. You know, one of the big ones, you've got a huge artery running through your wrist here and your forearm, and I've cut it just here. So what I want to do is grab this. I won't do it now. Maybe I will. So what you'll do, you'll put this on. It's very difficult to do this one-handed, which is a shame, but you put it on. You strap it round, so I'm trying to do this in camera and what have you at the same time. Now I've left this very deliberately loose because I'm not going to do it properly. But what you do is it's above the site of your wound, so my blood flow is running this way down my arm, and the blood is spurting out of my wrist here. And what you do is you basically take this little branch, sort of toggle thing, and you twist it. And you twist it. In fact, I probably will have to do this up a little bit tighter to make it a little bit more obvious what I'm doing. That's probably about right. So you strap it on, and again, this is why I say it's difficult to do one-handed, but to be honest, it's worthwhile doing just the same. So it's up here, here's my cut, and I'm spurting out arterial blood, and what I have to do is stop that blood from flowing out my body. And if I don't do that, I will very, very quickly become disorientated, nauseous. My judgment will be very severely impaired. So that's sort of just sort of gripping onto my arm here. And by turning this, what it's doing is it's creating, and hopefully you can see on the camera there, if I just give this another couple of turns, and I can feel that already on my arm. It's actually reasonably painful. And what that will do, hopefully you can see there, that's really sort of biting into my arm, sort of here and here. I mean, it's not tight enough yet to stop the blood flow, but it's painfully tight. And what that will do is the blood flow will stop at this point. And once it does that, it will stop flowing out here, or certainly greatly stem the flow of blood here, which may just give you enough time to call for help or to get out from when, if you've got that severe blood, you're probably not going to be moving anywhere, but you can make that call, and you can hopefully get help to you before this becomes completely life-threatening. But as I say, I think this is a really, really useful bit of kit, but I can't stress enough knowing how to use it. And if you do have bits of equipment in your medical kit that you don't understand how to use, don't use them. Take them out. If you can't use it, don't take it with you. I've seen people who go abroad on a normal family holiday, and they will buy an off-the-shelf first aid kit that contains syringes, for example. Now that's all well and good, and there is a place for that, because some people are concerned that syringes in foreign hospitals are not the cleanest or the safest, and that's fine. But unless you have that kit with you when you have your accident, it's absolutely pointless. If you're in the UK, and to be honest, in most European countries, over in the States and things like that, any medical assistance you're going to get will be done by professionals. If you are going over to these really obscure or third world countries and things like that, yeah, absolutely, maybe it's a good idea. But then again, in theory, you should have the relevant training as well. Right then, guys. Well, there was just one more thing I wanted to show you before I sign off, and that was this. Probably the most important piece of equipment in your first aid kit, certainly in my first aid kit, and it's this. It is a mobile phone. Now, some people may consider, how is that more important than your bandages or your tourniquets and stuff like that? And the short answer is that it doesn't matter how much of this stuff you use, how much patching up and binding up and splinting and whatever you want to do to yourself in that first aid scenario, just to sort of stop the bleeding or to get the limb bound properly or whatever it might be. But if you're not able to call for help, and we're talking serious scenarios here. If you've cut your finger and maybe it needs stitches, that's not going to prevent you from standing up. Once you've got a little bit of a dressing on there, it's not going to stop you standing up and walking off and seeking medical help. If you break a bone, or if you have a severe cut or a very, very severe burn, the likelihood is you're going to be immobilised, certainly to the point where you should be immobilised, so you're not putting any pressure either on that broken bone, or you're not exerting yourself so that your heart rate increases and you're pumping more blood out of that cut or whatever it may be. And as soon as that starts to happen, you're causing yourself more pain, you're causing yourself more injury, and all that's going to do is put you on a downward spiral, and you're going to start, your judgment's going to become impaired, and really, if you're able just to sit tight, make a call, whether it's to the emergency services, whether it's to a friend or family member or whoever, just to get to you, to then get you out to a hospital, to a doctor's surgery, whatever the need is. That is much more important than a lot of the stuff here. Now, that's not to say that if you do get for example, a very serious cut, absolutely, if you can and you know what you're doing, slap on a tourniquet, stop that blood flow. But if you're that seriously injured that you need to use a tourniquet, you're not walking anywhere, certainly not for any period of time. So mobile phone, keep it charged. If it's, unfortunately, as good as they are, modern smartphones are generally sealed units, and you can't carry around spare batteries like you could do in the old days. I do have a couple of really old phones that I picked up for very, very cheap money online. And I've got 3 or 4 batteries for them, which I fully charge up before I go out. This is a weekend trip or longer, basically. So I know I've got charge and batteries. Depending on where you are in the world, you may want to consider a radio, some kind of CB or a sat phone or something like that, depending on what you're doing, where you're going, and what works in your area. But anyway, guys, I hope it was useful. I hope it maybe gave you something to think about for your own kits. As I say, my kit tends to be predominantly for personal use only, if I need it. There's a few bits in there that I'm quite happy to share with people while I'm out and about, but I do believe very strongly that everybody that goes out practicing bushcraft or anything even similar, should take responsibility for themselves. Make sure you've got some kit to cover your own person if the need arises. Things like the tourniquet are a little bit specialist, and it's something I like to have, but again, I can't stress strongly enough, whatever kit you do carry with you, and this goes the same for most of your bushcrafting kit, know how to use it. There are certain items, knives, axes, saws, you need to be safe with, and you should have at least a basic safety understanding before going out and using them. If you need to learn, if you need practice, try and get someone to teach you. At the very worst case, and you can't do that, practice, but practice at home, whether it's in a garden, if you don't have a garden, say you live in a flat or something like that, you know, do it indoors. Get a couple of sheets down on the floor so that you can practice carving in a safe environment where you're going to have that emergency response if anything goes wrong. But anyway, I've rambled on for a bit now, guys, so I do hope it was useful. Comments and questions in the box below. Happy to answer anything you might want to ask. Hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I hope you'll all join me next time. Thanks, guys.